everyone. Welcome to Live at 5. Thanks for joining on and happy Wednesday. Wednesday, what is today of Nissan? The 10th or the 11th of Nissan, I think. One second, I have it here someplace on my. You have to. The 15th of Nissan is rapidly approaching, so it's coming up. Today, the 15th is Passover, so we know it's coming. Today is the 11th, and oops. Got a phone call in the middle of the show. That's bad. We got to turn the phone off for the studio. So let me see if I can make that quiet. That's what I was looking at my Hebrew calendar, and it rang. They have I think that's funny. There are phone apps with a prayer book on them. And so what happens when you're in the middle of praying and then your prayer book rings and you get a phone call or a text on? Very distracting. The really good prayer book apps actually they actually dismantle your phone for the time being, so that doesn't happen. But otherwise, it could be very interesting. Anyway, today, the whatever day we said of Nisan, the 11th day of the month of Nisan. Welcome. Thanks for joining. If you're watching us on Facebook Live and you'd like to, you could join us live in the studio on Live at 5, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Zoom, 694-348-057. And with that, you'll get into the studio, the back where all the fun happens. So the interesting thing about this particular date, the 11th of Nisan, is that it happens to be the yahrzeit, meaning the anniversary of the date of death of a very, very famous Jewish scholar known as Nachmanides, or the Ramban in sort of the way that the vernacular, the way we refer to him. And I wanted to just mention a few lovely things about his yahrzeit, because it's very, he's a very noteworthy scholar, and it's nice to know a little bit about him. Nachmanides actually was from Spain, and he lived most of his life where in the city of Spain, and where he was born, which was Girona. I'm not sure how they pronounce that, but it was in the year 1194. And he lived for 76 years, and he died in Israel. Eventually made it a journey late in life. He was of the opinion that people should travel to, it was a mitzvah, the fulfillment of a divine commandment to go and to live in Israel at any point. So he made that difficult journey, left his home at a late age, knowing he very likely would not be able to travel back and forth. It wasn't a flight, and it wasn't due to any kind of pandemic restrictions. But at that time, the journey from Spain across the Mediterranean to the Holy Land was a difficult, treacherous journey. And in his case, it was a one-way trip, and he spent the rest of his life and died in the Holy Land. There are many, many fabulous things that are said about him. Let's understand, first of all, what he's called, the name Nachmanides. So that seems to be some sort of a Greek or a Latin type of way to say his name. His first name was Moshe, and in the 12th century there weren't last names, but we would Jewishly refer to him as his name and the son of his father. His name was Moshe, and his father's name was Nachman. So you would then call him Moshe ben Nachman. And the way that we would make that into an acronym, is that a verb, to acronize him? We would refer to him by acronym would be Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. So it's the Ramban. Okay, Ramban. Now, Nachmanides seems to mean the son of Nachman. And that's I don't know if that's some anglicized version of that idea. He was the son of Nachman, his father, but that's how he's often known. Now, he was a brilliant Talmudic scholar. He was quite a noted scholar and specialist in particularly in Kabbalah. Certain scholars really were known to be, those through whom the esoteric, Kabbalistic, mystical knowledge and wisdom is passed, and he was one of those. His Rebbe, his primary teacher, was the Ramah, Rav Meir Abulafia of Abulafia. He was also one of the very mystical sort of voices throughout Jewish scholarship, and so no surprise there that his student Nachmanides inherited that, learned and studied extensively from him. In fact, not too long ago, the Art Scroll publisher came out with an English translated version of Nachmanides' very famous commentary on the Chumash, on the 5 books of Moshe, on the Torah, right? So it's a very, very important commentary. In fact, people say if you're studying the verses of the Torah and you can only look at one commentary, you should probably look at Rashi's commentary. He's considered the first and foremost commentary. But if you're ready for number 2, it should be Nachmanides' commentary on the Torah. Very important, but also very challenging. It's not an easy commentary. And a lot of his commentary is replete with his Kabbalistic insights. So if you're reading through that commentary on the Torah, every once in a while, he'll give a basic sort of an explanation, and then it'll say something like the Al Pi Derech Emes, and which basically means and in the way of truth. Okay. And what follows after that introduction is a whole bunch of stuff I have no idea what it means. Okay. Very difficult, very deep, I don't even read it. I skip it. So they came out a few years ago with this, and I saw it for the first time. It was an Art Scroll English translation of Nachmanides' commentary on the Torah. And I thought, wow, some scholar wrote up in English all of his Kabbalistic insights. I grabbed up a copy. I opened it up. I flipped to one of those comments and I looked at what it said. And it said, Al Pi Derech Emes, it said, Nachmanides' further explanation is Kabbalistic in nature and is beyond the scope of this work. That's what I thought. They didn't translate it. So it really is quite unbelievable. And there's a lot of comments like that. Great, brilliant Kabbalist. And I'll actually tell you a cute story that they tell about him. He apparently had a student whose name was Avner. Okay, that was the name, Avner. He was a student. And unfortunately, the story of the student is not a happy story. And eventually, even though he was none other than, his chief teacher and rabbi was none other than the great Nachmanides, but he somehow left his, not only the tutelage of his teacher, his rabbi, but he left Judaism and he became an apostate, someone who had literally a total, wanton disregard of Judaism. Terrible. It happens to be, says the story, that after some time, he and his Rebbe bumped into each other. Okay, he came into contact with his Rebbe again, Rebbe Nachmanides, and he said to him, Avner, he said, you always taught me that everything has its source in the Torah. A very mystical idea we spoke about on Live at 5 a week or two ago. And everything has its source in the Torah. Where's my name in the Torah? He asked him, okay? Where's my name in the Torah? So without batting an eyelid, as the story goes, Nachmanides referred to him and he pointed at a verse in the song Ha'azinu, which is the second to the last parsha of the Torah. And there, in 4 consecutive words, the third letter of each word spells out Avner perfectly. Aleph, Ves, Nun, Resh. And the 4 words are Afapeam Ashbis Me'enosh Zichram, which basically means, in my anger, I will erase him from memory. So that's like a terrible, right? Can you imagine? And he was so scared by that. It was shaken to his core. And the story does, in fact, have a happy ending after that. He in fact was rattled enough to rethink and to return to Judaism and to his teacher. So a fabulous story of the brilliance and the mystical insight of Nachmanides. And a good corollary, by the way, of the topic from 2 weeks ago, Live at 5, we talked about, I just want to find my letter in the Torah. Okay, you have to go back and look for that show. It's in the annals of Live at 5 somewhere. But the truth is that Nachmanides is often confused with Maimonides. Okay, Maimonides, Nachmanides. Okay, now it's very easy to confuse the two because they're the only ones that of Jewish scholars of that have this sort of Latinate reference to them, and their names sound very familiar. Their names are very familiar. In fact, both of their names were Moshe. There was Moshe, the son of Nachman, and Moshe, the son of Maimon. And so we call him Maimonides because he's in Latin, that means the son of Maimon, just like we call Nachmanides the son of Nachman. Now, they were not exactly contemporaries. They lived Maimonides, whose, by the way, whose acronym would be Rev Moshe ben Maimon. So there'd be Rambam. Okay, now here's again, you get a difference between Rambam and Ramban. And there is I'll just tell you how to differentiate between them when you hear them. The convention is that when we want to say Maimonides' name, Rambam, we accent it on the first syllable, Rambam. And when we want to say Nachmanides' name, we accent it on the second syllable, Ramban. So there's the Rambam and the Ramban. And even if you don't hear it clearly, you could tell by which syllable has been accented which one we're talking about. So that's the convention. There's the Ramban and there's the Rambam. Okay, and that's the convention about how we refer to them so you don't mix them up. But the first one of the two of them was Maimonides, in fact. And although his yahrzeit is not now, I just noticed that today is Nachmanides' yahrzeit and Shabbos is Maimonides' birthday. So just, nothing but coincidence there, but how interesting. So they kind of, both of them, something, a date of significance in their lives this week. It's interesting that Maimonides was born the day before Pesach, Erev Pesach, and very cool. Maimonides and Nachmanides, both tremendous voices in Jewish scholarship. And in fact, Nachmanides wrote comments and, sometimes arguing vehemently with Maimonides, his predecessor. So it's very interesting to see that. They weren't contemporaries, but Maimonides was such a well-known scholar that he wrote, he had contributions to Jewish scholarship that somewhat, within a century, Nachmanides had read, commented on, etc. And they're often, contrasted, not just because of the similarity of their names. If you want to take a look, and we'll conclude our discussion of that here, of Nachmanides' life, he was, again, a very influential contributor to Jewish scholarship. Many great books. I have one over here on the shelf. It's called Shar HaGemul. I don't think it's in English, and it has to do with the whole Jewish perspective on reward and punishment, Rosh Hashanah, Tshuva, judgment, everything. Very, very fundamental philosophic work on all those topics. But you can find in English a very interesting one called The Disputation. In that period, in the 12th century and the 13th century when he lived, was unfortunately a frequent occasion that Christian scholars pushed and forced their Jewish contemporaries to engage in religious debates. And unfortunately, this often was really a lose-lose situation, meaning to say, either they were going to be shown up to be wrong and they're going to be expected to convert to Judaism, or if they were victorious in the religious debate with the Christian priest, then they were going to be expelled or worse. So it was really a very difficult situation. But Nachmanides was literally the defender of the faith in one of these famous debates in Barcelona, and he wrote up his account of what happened, and I believe it is translated into English. And in English, it's called The Disputation. In Hebrew, the Vikuach which translated as disputation. It's a great short read. You really want to get a little window into what it was like in the difficult European years like that. And I believe that shortly around that time there was one of the multiple expulsions of Spanish Jewry from Spain. We know the more famous one in the 15th century, but there were other ones. Maimonides himself, also from Spain, was ejected I believe in the 11th century, ejected from the Jews who were kicked out of Spain, and he himself fled into northern Africa, never made it to the land of Israel. But Nachmanides, again, yahrzeit today, he was engaged. He was forced to defend the faith and engage in one of those debates, and left not by expulsion, but voluntarily in his effort to make a trip to Israel. Now, I'll just tell this last story then. I believe that when he came to Israel late in the 12th century, late in the 13th century, that it's said that he came to Jerusalem and he didn't even find a minyan. There were some Jews, but there weren't 10. It was right before Rosh Hashanah, and he was hoping, to have at least a 10, a minyan of 10 Jews in Jerusalem to pray with for Rosh Hashanah. He was not able to find it, and he went south to Hebron, where he did find a minyan. There were 10 at the time in the 13th century. There were 10. There was a community of Jews in Hebron around the birthplace. The burial place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, etc. But if you go to the old city, there's a kind of a thin underground synagogue known as the Ramban, the Nachmanides synagogue. It's a small place, but it's right in the Jewish quarter of the old city. And I believe it bears a historic connection to him and to his, maybe he founded it, or when he was there, he went back to Jerusalem and did try to gather a minyan and set up a little synagogue there. And there is to this very day a Nachmanides synagogue in Jerusalem that you can visit. So we with this we'll conclude a little bit of the fascinating history of Nachmanides. Yahrzeit is today, and every time you quote someone, you in a sense are giving them a merit, and especially on their yahrzeit, a very beautiful thing to do, to speak so in such a positive way about them. Okay, now wanted to also just say, if anyone needs, just now on to next, if anyone still needs a Haggadah, there are so many wonderful and different varied Haggadahs which are sitting on the shelf at the Jewish Experience. Okay, so if you would like to come and pick one up, and they're for sale, they're sitting there on the shelf. We have a ton. I was just there, and there are some people folks that's still in the office tomorrow, and we can help you by appointment. Get in touch if you'd like to come by and pick out a brilliant, interesting, insightful, helpful companion to your Passover Seder. We have a bunch of those. We have Haggadahs of all sizes and shapes and colors, with pictures and ideas and all kinds of thoughtful things. So if you're interested, please stop by and take advantage of one of those. And some of them are new this year, just put out on the shelf, new. And you want to get a hold of those, get in touch with us, and we can get those in your hands. But if you have a favorite or a classic, now is a good time to take a look into that and see if you find anything interesting there that you might like to bring out. It's funny that that we are so, the commentaries on the Haggadah, I think, are the most published commentaries on anything in the Torah, maybe anything in the world. You've so many different efforts made to try to expand the conversations that take place at Seder tables, bringing out ideas. And it's just, as the Jewish people, we love to sit and talk and think together and discuss and analyze and rational, and use our rational thoughts to try to squeeze every little beneficial lesson and important idea we can out of our history, out of our Torah, out of our Haggadah, out of the Seder night. We just love to talk about it. So speaking of that, I just want to share a beautiful, beautiful thought that I saw not long ago, inspiring about the Seder night, and it has to do with the freedom of speech. Big topic of the news today, freedom of speech. So it happens to be that you could literally consider Passover the holiday of freedom of speech. How so? So because like this, it's a very, like we said, we started to say, it's a very talky holiday. And there's a lot of talking that goes on. In fact, the name of the holiday is Pesach, which our sages break up into two words, peh and sach. Peh is Hebrew for mouth, and sach means to talk. So Pesach not only is the literal meaning to pass over, but the name of the holiday can be read and to mean the mouth that speaks. In addition, at the beginning of the Passover Seder, we pick up the matzah and we say, Zeh lechem oni. We says, this is the lechem oni, which we often translate as the bread of affliction. The word oni can be understood as meaning affliction. But the Talmud says that the word lechem oni also means is from the word la'anos, which means to answer, as if to say, this is the bread over which lots of questions are going to be asked and answered. Okay, that's another thing about matzah. It's the bread that we ask and answer questions over. So you see, it's not incidental to the holiday. It's very essential to the holiday. Now, the if you look carefully at the words of the Haggadah too, you will see that there's a certain turning point. There's like a turning point in the story of the Egyptian bondage of the Jewish people, at which time the Jewish people cried out. They literally cried out and in prayer and a bitter tears and a cry of a plea. God, save us! Come down and get us! Don't leave here to disappear into the quagmire of Egyptian exile. And at that point, the Passover Seder says, God heard. And then the Exodus began. Okay. So you see that there's something incredibly powerful being said, that the turning point was also through speech. It was that speech, was where they was the way that they ultimately invoked the divine assistance, the actual rescue. God said, okay, I'll come and get you. Now, there's a question which is kind of asked. I mean, do we think that they weren't praying all along? What was going on? These are the Jewish people? Weren't they? They were suffering. They were enslaved. Was it one moment when they cried out? What was going on before that point? And the commentary, the Shemi Shmuel, which is very beautiful and insightful and mystical kind of a commentary on the Torah, actually said that in a sense, and this is based on lots of sources, that the faculty of speech in Egypt was considered to be shackled. It was in bondage as well. That just like the Jewish people were enslaved and in bondage, so was their faculty of speech. They weren't able to really and truly, sincerely and genuinely cry out in a meaningful way. And it was at a certain point that they couldn't anymore. That literally they were on their last legs as a people. Spiritually, they were the lowest of the low, the furthest of the far. And their cry, their genuine, deep spiritual cry was, God, connect with us, get us, bring us out of this, not just because we need to be spared from slavery, but because it's so painful, the distance, the gap between us is so intolerable. We can't anymore. And not only did God save the Jewish people, but he saved us and our faculty of speech. So freedom of speech, the freedom of the Jewish people came along with the freedom of speech to get out and to use our faculty of speech, to be able to speak, to pray, to connect with words. We can study Torah, we can connect to each other, and we can connect through prayer to Hashem, to God Almighty. That is something that part enjoyed, as it were, a kind of an exodus along with us, our faculty of speech. It was the freedom of speech that took place in the Exodus, as well as the freedom of the Jewish people. And so that's a bit of a twist on what the word means, but think of it that way, as if we ourselves needed to have our ability to speech rescued from the shackles of Egypt. And we've talked a little bit about this week about constrictions, what holds us back, what's sort of preventing us from doing our thing, and in a sense, our ability to speak was shackled and bound as well, and we need to be free. Now, freedom of speech doesn't mean, as some would say it today, to just shoot off my mouth and say whatever I darn well please, and whoever I talk about will be could just be damned. We don't mean that at all. We want to use our faculty of speech well, and we want to choose our words carefully. Not that we want others to shackle us or to constrain us. But we want to express self-restraint about what we say, to be careful not to speak lashon hara, not to speak onas devarim, not to cause machlokes or a disagreement. All those are the types of things that with Clean Speech Colorado we try to avoid. And but we need to express self-restraint, and then when we have sort of removed all the negative from our speech, then we'll have a very powerful tool. The mouth will be even a much more powerful tool of speech to be able to say all those positive, meaningful things that we want to say to each other, to Hashem Almighty. That's it's an important facet of the Passover holiday, in a sense. I once heard, actually, was a Rabbi Akiva Tatz. He now lives in London. He's originally from South Africa. I was a student of his for a time in Jerusalem, and he came to Denver quite a few years ago, and he gave a talk at the East Side Kosher Deli in the back, and maybe you were there. And and at the time he spoke about this topic. It was about lashon hara and how much that is the opposite of the Passover Seder. We made, I mentioned it, I think yesterday maybe, but we made a little table tent for you. If you could, that you can welcome to download from the Clean Speech Colorado Facebook page. Take a look, and it says, you could put it right on your Seder table, a little table tent, and it says, let's pass over the lashon hara this year. Let's not have any lashon hara, God forbid, any demeaning, negative gossip, slander, offensive words or language at our Seder table. It's the exact opposite of Passover. The Pesach, the mouth that speaks in a holy way, should be cleansed, should be devoid, should certainly not engage in any of these types of problematic, forbidden speech. We should express self-restraint, try to have a peaceful Seder table, and get along and be willing to be tolerant as best we can, and to be. We spoke a little bit ago about the powerful ability of a person, to be able to tolerate a discomfort when someone says something it was inappropriate, even offensive, to be able to just not respond in kind, not get them back, not one up them, not escalate, but to just let it roll off your back. If someone says something that doesn't strike you right, let it go. Don't want to make a train wreck out of a Passover Seder with an absence of harmony at the Seder table. So that would be when we made a table tent for Thanksgiving back in November. It said, don't be the turkey at the Thanksgiving table. Don't speak any lashon hara. So I didn't want to say don't be the Paschal lamb. That didn't sound right. But but let's pass over the lashon hara this year. Let's try to have a lashon hara free Seder table. Wouldn't that be amazing? And that will really be the way that we can empower our speech to effectively reach its destination in heavens and achieve our hoped for results. All our prayers should be answered. Prayers for peace and for achievement and for community, and prayers for well-being and wealth and health, and prayers for the end of this pandemic, and all the other things on our list. And ultimately, the greatest prayer that we have, we're celebrating the Exodus from Egypt, and let us soon and speedily celebrate the Exodus from this current exile and be back to our autonomous Jewish country with our temple and our Judaism intact. Amen. That's it for today, folks. Have a healthy and a holy, and we'll see you one more day this week, tomorrow on Live at 5. Tomorrow at 5. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.